Hey everyone, today we're diving deep into one of the most talked about legal battles unfolding right now, the Diddy trial. But we're not just rehashing headlines or focusing on the sensational aspects, though there are plenty of those. Believe me, as a lawyer and analyst, my goal today is to get under the microscope and really dissect the legal strategies at play from both sides. This isn't just about accusations. It's about how two highly skilled legal teams are fighting tooth and nail, using every tool in their arsenal to win. So, grab your legal pads or just your favorite snack, and let's break down the courtroom chess match that is the Diddy trial. First off, let's quickly recap what we're even talking about. Sean Diddy Combs, once a titan of the music industry, is facing some incredibly serious federal charges: racketeering conspiracy, multiple counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. These aren't minor charges. If convicted on all counts, Diddy could be looking at life in prison. The stakes, as you can imagine, couldn't be higher. His arrest happened back in September 2024, and the trial officially kicked off with jury selection on May 5, 2025, in a New York federal courtroom. Since then, it's been a whirlwind of intense testimony and strategic maneuvers. Now, let's talk about the prosecution's game plan. Their main weapon here is the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, or RICO. You've probably heard of RICO in connection with mob cases, right? That's because it was originally designed to dismantle organized crime syndicates. But over the years, it's been expanded to cover a much broader range of criminal enterprises. For the prosecution, using RICO is a huge strategic advantage. It allows them to bring in a vast array of evidence and testimony, even from incidents that happened years ago, to show not just individual bad acts, but that Diddy allegedly ran a whole criminal enterprise. They're essentially arguing that his businesses and influence weren't just for making music or money, but were systematically used to facilitate, carry out, and then cover up these alleged acts of violence, abuse, and commercial sex. It's about showing a pattern, a system, an organization behind the alleged crimes, rather than just isolated incidents. They're trying to convince the jury that Diddy was the head of this Combs enterprise, and that his employees and associates were used to further his alleged criminal activities. To build this enterprise narrative, the prosecution is relying heavily on witness testimony, particularly from alleged victims and former employees. This is where things get incredibly intense and often graphic. The star witness for the prosecution has been Cassie Ventura, Diddy's ex-girlfriend and an R&B singer. Her testimony spanned 4 days and was absolutely crucial. She detailed years of alleged physical and emotional abuse, and described being coerced into what the indictment calls freak-offs, drug-fueled multi-day marathons of sex with prostitutes that she claims Diddy orchestrated and directed. She testified about feeling forced to participate and being afraid of the consequences if she didn't comply. A key piece of evidence introduced during her testimony was the infamous 2016 hotel surveillance video, which shows Diddy physically assaulting her. The prosecution used this video to corroborate her claims of violence and to visually demonstrate the alleged pattern of abuse for the jury. Seeing that footage, combined with Cassie's emotional testimony, is incredibly impactful. Her testimony sets the stage for the prosecution's entire case, establishing the alleged pattern of control and abuse. Then, we heard from an anonymous witness, a former personal assistant referred to as Mia. Her testimony was equally harrowing and further reinforced the prosecution's narrative of a controlling and abusive environment. Mia claimed Diddy sexually assaulted her on multiple occasions, threw her into a swimming pool, dumped ice on her, and slammed a door against her arm during her 8 years working for him. She also corroborated Cassie's accounts of physical abuse, detailing a brutal assault at Cassie's Los Angeles home in 2013, where she saw Diddy slam Cassie's head into a bed corner, causing a deep gash. Mia described feeling terrified and confused and ashamed and scared, and stated that she couldn't tell him no about anything. She even testified that she wasn't allowed to lock doors in Diddy's guest houses. reinforcing the idea of extreme control. Her testimony about witnessing Cassie's abuse and her own alleged experiences paints a picture of a pervasive, fear-driven environment, which is exactly what the RICO charge aims to prove. Beyond the alleged victims, the prosecution has called other former employees and associates to the stand to further build their case. George Kaplan, a personal assistant from 2013 to 2015, testified about cleaning up after freak-offs, disposing of liquor bottles and drugs, and never reporting abuse, even after witnessing Diddy allegedly beat Cassie on a private jet. Another personal assistant, David James, recounted stocking hotel rooms with Viagra, condoms, and baby oil, and he described an alarming incident where Diddy allegedly had 3 handguns on his lap while driving to look for rival Suge Knight. Dawn Richard, a singer who got her start on Diddy's reality show Making the Band, testified that Diddy threatened her life after she witnessed him beat Cassie and try to hit her with a skillet in 2009, telling her and another woman they could go missing if they didn't stay quiet. These testimonies, while not directly about sex trafficking, are crucial for the racketeering charge because they illustrate the alleged scope of Diddy's control and the fear he supposedly instilled in those around him. The prosecution is also trying to connect Diddy to other alleged acts of wrongdoing, like the 2012 firebombing of rapper Kid Cudi's car. Kid Cudi himself testified, saying he believed Diddy was involved after finding out Cudi and Cassie had been dating. This incident is being presented as another example of Diddy's alleged intimidation tactics and part of the broader racketeering conspiracy. There was even a moment of contention where the defense moved for a mistrial, arguing that the prosecution improperly implied Diddy interfered with the police investigation into the firebombing by raising questions about destroyed fingerprint records. While the judge denied the mistrial, it shows how the prosecution is trying to tie seemingly disparate events into their overarching criminal enterprise theory. In terms of other evidence, the prosecution is using everything they can get their hands on: text messages, financial records, even alleged attempts by Diddy to bribe hotel staff to suppress the 2016 surveillance video. Their narrative is clear. Diddy was not just a successful music mogul, but the head of a criminal organization that used his power, wealth, and influence and to exploit, abuse, and silence people. They're trying to show a calculated, long-term pattern of behavior. Now, let's flip the coin and look at Team Defense's strategy. Diddy has pleaded not guilty to all charges, and his legal team's primary goal is to poke holes in the prosecution's narrative and create enough reasonable doubt in the minds of the jurors to secure an acquittal. A major part of their strategy is attacking witness credibility. This is standard practice in any trial, but it's particularly critical here, given the emotional and often graphic nature of the testimony. Drug use. The defense has focused heavily on the alleged drug use of witnesses, including Cassie. They've questioned her about her own drug use, particularly ketamine, and whether she and Diddy referred to themselves as get-high partners. The implication here is that memories from drug-fueled events might be unreliable or distorted. They're trying to plant the seed of doubt. Can you really trust what someone remembers from a drug-fueled party years ago? Now, let's talk about the defense. Diddy's lawyers are coming at this with a very calculated, aggressive strategy, and they're hitting several key points hard. First up, financial motives. They've suggested again and again that many of the accusers are just looking for a payout. They brought up Cassie's civil settlement, which she initially kept confidential, but later confirmed on the stand was $20 million. The implication here is clear. She got paid, so maybe that's what this is all about. It's a classic defense move. If you can make the jury believe that a witness has something to gain financially, it chips away at their credibility. And when the whole case comes down to who the jury believes, that's a big deal. Second, inconsistencies. During cross-examination, the defense is going line by line, detail by detail, trying to catch any contradictions or lapses in memory. They zeroed in on small things, like whether Cassie actually saw Diddy throw a hanger at a friend, trying to show even minor uncertainty or doubt in her testimony, because If a witness seems unsure about one part, it can cast a shadow over everything else they say. Then there's what you might call the lifestyle defense. Diddy's legal team has argued that while his relationships may have been unconventional, even wild at times, they were ultimately consensual. They're trying to reframe the freak-offs not as trafficking, but as consensual adult choices within what they describe as a swinger lifestyle. They're painting Cassie not as a helpless victim, but as a strong, independent woman who willingly participated and only later changed her story. This is all about narrative control. They want the jury to think, okay, maybe it was messy, maybe it was even unhealthy, but it wasn't. Criminal. Now, let's talk about the RICO angle, because this is a huge battleground. The prosecution is saying, this wasn't just Diddy doing bad things. This was a criminal enterprise, organized, structured, long-term. But the defense? They're fighting that hard. They're saying, wait, these are legit businesses. Just because something shady may have happened doesn't make it a mob. They want to break that chain, decouple the music empire from the alleged crimes. Argue that anything illegal was isolated, not part of a coordinated system. If they can break the enterprise link, they might take down the whole RICO charge. Then you've got the Kid Cudi car fire situation. The prosecution tried to suggest Diddy had something to do with it, and that destroyed fingerprint records might point to some kind of cover-up. The defense immediately fired back. They called it prosecutorial misconduct, moved for a mistrial, and accused the government of trying to prejudice the jury unfairly. Now, the judge denied that mistrial motion. But it shows you how aggressive this defense team is. They are ready to object to everything, to challenge the prosecution at every turn, especially when they think the government is playing into public biases like, Diddy's rich, he can buy his way out of anything. Ultimately, their story is this. Diddy is a massively successful man who lived an unconventional life and is now being targeted by opportunists and an overreaching prosecution. They're arguing that what's being painted as abuse or trafficking was actually messy, consensual adult behavior. That it might make people uncomfortable, but it wasn't illegal. And now, let's pause here to break down a few core legal concepts that are central to understanding this case. Quick and simple. Here's what you need to know. RICO stands for Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. It's usually used for mob cases, but here prosecutors are using it to say Diddy ran a criminal organization through his legit businesses. The power of RICO is that it allows the prosecution to connect the dots, to say all these different incidents, over the years, are part of one big pattern, not random, not isolated, coordinated. Sex trafficking. This isn't just someone being paid for sex. It's about force, fraud, or coercion. The prosecution has to prove that people didn't willingly take part. They were manipulated, threatened, or abused into it. Conspiracy. This one's about agreement. Did Diddy conspire, and that is agree with others, to commit crimes as part of an enterprise? He doesn't have to have done every act himself. The prosecution just needs to prove he was part of the plan. Burden of proof. This is key in every criminal trial. The prosecution has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Diddy is guilty. That's a very high bar. If even one juror says, I'm not sure, that can result in a hung jury, or even an acquittal. Witness credibility. This trial hinges on who the jury believes. The defense is attacking credibility by bringing up past drug use, by pointing to big settlement payouts, or suggesting inconsistencies in memory. If they can make the jury doubt even one key witness, they win cross-examination. This is the defense's chance to challenge the prosecution's version of events, leave in the moment. They'll press witnesses hard, look for cracks, and try to get them to say something that helps the defense or hurts their own story. Mistrials. A mistrial is when something goes so off the rails that the judge has to hit the reset button. They're rare, but the defense did try to get one here, after the whole Kid Cudi fingerprint situation, arguing that it unfairly tainted the jury. The judge said no, but that move shows how high the stakes are, and how closely both sides are watching every word that gets said in that courtroom. Now step back and think of the courtroom like a high-stakes chessboard. Every move matters. Every objection, every piece of evidence, every witness, it's all part of the strategy. You've got Judge Aaron Subramanian keeping order, like the referee making sure the rules are followed, and you've got the jury, 12 individuals who hold Diddy's fate in their hands. They're hearing it all, the good, the bad, the brutal. They're the ones who will make the final call, and make no mistake. This courtroom is tense, it's emotional, it's full of pressure. What we see in headlines is just the surface. Inside that room, it's long days of raw, often disturbing testimony, and highly skilled legal maneuvering. So what's next? The prosecution still has more witnesses to call. We're expecting Jane, another alleged victim, to testify under a pseudonym. Once they wrap up their case, it's the defense's turn. They'll decide whether to put on their own witnesses, maybe to back up the narrative of consensual relationships, maybe to attack specific claims, or maybe to bring in character witnesses and experts. Then come closing arguments, the final chance for each side to tell the jury their story, to tie it all together, to drive it home. After that, the jury heads into deliberations. It could take a day, a week, and even longer, and the possible outcomes: acquittal, if they find Diddy not guilty on all counts, conviction on some or all charges, or a hung jury, if they just can't agree, which could mean a mistrial, and a possible retrial down the road. No matter how this ends, this case is a massive moment for the music industry, for the justice system, and for public perception of power, abuse, and accountability. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think of the legal strategies at play here? Is the prosecution building a compelling case, or is the defense making a strong case for reasonable doubt? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Lawyers IQ, where we dive deep into real cases with real legal insight. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.